Just check your head. How tall are you, Daniel?
I'm 5'11".
Yeah. Sorry. How tall are you, Dominic? I'm
not tall enough.
Okay. You still hit your head here. Okay, let's get in here.
This is your camera here. This is my camera.
That's yours. That's mine.
Okay.
But don't worry about the cameras. Okay, Dominic? Pretend it's radio. Here we go.
What up, Mike? Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love.
Welcome to episode 1527 of Toronto Mic'd. Proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. The Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team, the best baseball in the city outside the Dome. Join me August 4th, that's this coming Sunday, 2 p.m. I'm recording live at Christie Pitts, right after I throw out the first pitch. Dominic, that's happening, buddy. Christie Pitts, this Sunday. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. And Ridley Funeral Home, pillars of the community since 1921. Today, making his Toronto Mic debut, is Canada's original news videographer. It's Dominic Sciullo. Welcome, Dominic.
Well, how exciting is this?
How excited are you? You're sharply dressed today. I love it.
I like to wear a jacket when I step out the door because you never know where you're going to end up.
And you have your bodyguard here, right? You're heavy.
Well, he also does videography work.
And he's sharply dressed. So your videographer has to be sharply dressed. But you didn't dress like this on Citytv?
No, I wasn't able to carry all that heavy equipment around with a jacket on, so I had to keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Okay, good to meet you. Do you have any recollection of meeting me in the past? Because we've met twice before. I'm going to jog your memory, Dominic. Do you remember meeting me at all in your extensive life here?
Well, I certainly ran into you a few months ago at the Electric Circus reunion.
Yes. Okay. So the Electric Circus reunion, I was introduced to you. I don't know if it was maybe Joel Goldberg maybe introduced us or Ed Conroy or somebody like that, but it was great to see you there. That is the one and only, I wore the same shirt that day, by the way. That's the one and only time in my life I met Moses.
You're kidding.
That's the only time I've had FaceTime with Moses.
I thought Moses had met just about everybody in this city at this point, especially anyone who can control an audio board and a camera.
No, are you kidding me? Do you know the efforts and the lobbying that's been done to get Moses on Toronto Mic'd? He has always consistently took a pass. Why is that, do you think? Why won't Moses make his Toronto Mic debut?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure why he wouldn't. After doing 1,527 episodes, you've got some experience.
I finally got to Dominic Sciullo, and Moses is next. Okay, but regardless, there's another time we bumped into each other. We bumped into each other outside of an event for the Mary Ormsby book about Ben Johnson.
Yes.
And I'm just out there. Some guy was parked crazily, and I was having this, watching this guy and this parking meter attendant go at it. I'm just soaking in the city on the Danforth. And there you are. So that was the second time, and we finally made this happen. Welcome to Toronto Mic.
Yeah, thank you. That was Ken White's book that he put out with Ben Johnson.
Yes.
And we were invited to that event, and it was nice to be there and see Ben, who I haven't seen since my early 20s, if not my teens, in Scarborough.
Did he recognize you?
He was having a busy, emotional evening, but it was great to see him. And, of course, connect with you.
Well, it's the Olympics are on, and we've been, Ben, you think about Ben at Olympic time, right? Especially Summer Olympics. We think about Ben Johnson and what went down in 1988. I feel like the country, in some level, is still grappling with it all. Like, here we are cheering on the not only winning gold medal, but world record time, 9:79. And then a day later, there's something happening. And next thing, a couple of days later, stripping the medal, no record. Ben kind of going home in shame. It all kind of happened that week. It was a wild week in news.
Yeah. Well, there's a little controversy still going on with our Olympics and our Canadian soccer. team, but we won't talk about that.
No, that's the good stuff. Okay. But, you know, they could still advance to that soccer team, which got penalized 6 points, which is like 2 of the wins not counting. They could still advance.
Well, they beat France.
They won the first 2 games. That puts them at 0. So we win 2 games. Now we're like even Steven. We're back at 0. But if we beat Colombia, I believe we still advance to the next round, which is kind of a mind blow to be docked 6 points and still advance.
I think there's another award for that.
You a big soccer buff?
I'm not.
Okay, you know, I
More of a hockey guy.
You're more of a hockey guy. Okay, my condolences. You see Wendell Clark's in the.
Yeah, I've been staring at the big C.
Well, when you go to the washroom afterwards, you'll be staring at Doug Gilmore. Okay, just to make sure you perform properly. Okay, can we go back? I introduced you as Canada's original video journalist or videographer or whatever term you prefer. But tell me, is that absolutely true? I pulled it out of your bio. Are you the first person in Canada to be like a videographer?
I believe I am. These days, I'm getting the credit of creating the selfie, which...
Is that right? I thought John Gallagher created the selfie.
Well, John did more than just create the selfie. He did a little bit of everything.
What else did he do with you? I want to hear about the washrooms.
Well, there's some stories that I'm just not able to tell with a microphone or a camera in front
All right,
of me.
this interview's over, Dominic. I'm shutting it down.
All
Just
right.
kidding. All right, take me back, though. Like, how does that come to be? Give me your origin story, how you end up as Canada's original video journalist.
Well, this is a question I get asked all the time. And it's an interesting story because I had no intention of being in television. I had set out to work on Wall Street. And in grade 12, I was asked to be the very first intern at Citytv.
You're the first intern at Citytv.
The very first intern in 1982.
Wow.
And I thought, well, this is kind of fun. I can get a credit out of this, have fun for the second semester of grade 12, and then I go back to university. Western was the intention, and end up doing what I wanted to do, which was investment banking. However, things didn't work out that way. I ended up as the intern, and I was offered really a full-time job upon the end of my internship. However, I decided I would work part-time on the opening edition of City Pulse Weekend News. And from there, I decided I'd go back to school and at least get a couple of years in under broadcast journalism at Seneca.
Right.
And I thought, well, this is kind of fun, but still, I prefer, going to university. However, I was offered a full-time job upon finishing my 2 years at Seneca College, and I became one of the youngest news cameramen in the city at 19 years old. And I thought, wow, you've given me a car, you're giving me all this equipment, I'm traveling around the world, I'm meeting some pretty cool people. I could do this for a little while. Well, it's 42 years later.
42 years later. Wow. Okay, questions now. Okay, so how do you get the first internship at Citytv? Do you walk in and apply? Peter Gross is here all the time. I produce his podcast. Good friend of the program. By the way, drop names, okay? I need to know, what are Peter Gross and John Gallagher doing in the lunchroom at 99 Queen East or 299 Queen Street? Well, I need to know all these things. But, like, does Moses bump into you somewhere and say, I like the cut of your jib, Dominic? Like, give me this. How do you become the first intern?
Moses is hands-on. Yeah, how I became the first intern was complete fluke. My grade 12 teacher asked me to be an intern because I was in a high school television program, one of only 2 at the time, Stephen Leacock in Scarborough, and I had a 98 average. I had a thing for photography, but I didn't really have any interest in television. And he placed me there along with other students at CBC and CTV, CFTO as it was known.
Sure, CFTO.
And it's sort of worked out. And that was 1982. I became the news camera man for about 5 years, and then I applied for an on-air position in about 1988.
Right when Ben is winning gold in Seoul, you're getting your on-air position.
And Moses says, well, I'm going to make you the first videographer. Now, remember, the term videographer wasn't even around at that time.
Right.
So I said, what is that? And he said, well, you're going to shoot, and you're going to edit, and you're going to produce, and you're going to be on camera. And I said, do you pay me 4 times the salary?
Right.
He said, no, but you're going to have the fame of being one of the first. Now, at the time, I didn't know what to make of it because I didn't know what it was. But eventually I got to learn that his vision for television was to make that entire newsroom and every program, from the new music in all the specialty channels, videography driven. And I ended up starting to train a lot of these individuals, not just in the newsroom, but internationally. And my job from the City Pulse newsroom took me to the international division, where we started opening up Citytvs and Much Musics from Barcelona to Bogota to Helsinki, Manchester. We were living on the road for 10 years, and it was probably 10 of the best years of my life.
So you're on Moses's, on Chum City's dime, you're getting to go to these great locations, and so you get to go on site, right? There's no zooming in back then.
No, there was no iPhones back then.
No.
We still had to carry the big Betacam and the accessories, and it was quite an undertaking to travel with equipment. It still is these days. However, you can manage a lot with just an iPhone, but we didn't have that. But it became an incredible journey, traveling the world with Moses and all these Citytv executives, and having that opportunity to experience the cultures, because we would import the philosophy of Citytv, but we would hire locally.
Right.
So Barcelona had its local people on air, but the style and format of Citytv was something they adapted from Toronto. So it became quite interesting, because at that time, national coverage was everything in a lot of these countries. And when we brought local to the market, they were fascinated that they were learning about what was happening in their own backyards versus what was happening at Queen's Park or, on a federal level.
Dominic, okay, now we've set the table, how you got there, what you did there. But 1982, when you're interning at Citytv, can you name check some people? Like who's there, who's in the building? This is 99 Queen Street East, right? So, give me a little vibe on some of the cats you're working with, and what is the vibe at Citytv in 1982?
Well, you're pushing me.
Come on, Dominic. I'm jogging the memory. This is all.
You're more than jogging the memory. You're taking me back to a time that is beyond what I can recall.
And why is that, Dominic?
Well, there was a lot going on at the time, because we kind of had the ability to do. I wouldn't say as we please, but there was kind of a free reign at Citytv in that era. And it didn't stem from the top down. It would almost stem from the bottom up. And you had the ability to produce your content without having the permission of Moses or the producer. You had the ability to achieve that. And if it was good, it would go on the air. So we had an exciting startup. I considered it a startup back then, because we were all experimenting as we went along. Jim McKenney coming out of the Maple Leafs, Jojo Chinto,
Yes.
Mary Garfello,
Yeah.
Debbie Van Kiekebelt,
Yeah.
Gord Martineau, Ann Ruskowski. Some of these people I still have good relationships with today. We were a family. We really were. That's how I could best sum that up. We were very close. Not only did we work together for 12, 15 hours a day, but we would go out drinking afterwards, or, we'd always be celebrating somebody's event or having a party at some point, which led into 299 Queen Street, which, as everybody knows, became a party hub central for just about every major event.
That's why Toronto Mike exists, Dominic, to collect the stories from 299 Queen in these days. So without a doubt. Now, okay, so...
That's why you have 1,527 episodes.
And half of them are just Peter Gross and John Gallagher telling me about doing coke at 299 Queen Street.
Well,
West.
they said that. I didn't say that.
I'm not putting... No, you haven't said anything. You haven't said anything, Dominic. Okay, so we're now there, and this philosophy of Moses, maybe like getting that philosophy so young, which is sort of so different from SIFTO, I suppose, where it's like, go do that thing, and then maybe it makes it to air. It sounds like you're doing not jack of all trades, that's the wrong terminology, but you get to wet your beak in a whole bunch of different
But you're right. I did have a little experience with just about everything. So, if I had to clean out the bathrooms, I was able to clean out the bathrooms. But if I had to get a story on the air, I was usually the first called out on breaking news, because a videographer can execute a lot quicker than a team of 2 or 3 people can.
Of course.
So I would end up doing a lot of breaking news. And we had a thing that you couldn't use a voiceover on a videographer story. So you had to capture the moment and tell the story with the picture. Whereas reporters are able to simply voice over an entire 1.5 minute piece
Sure.
and give you the details. I didn't have that privilege. I had to be on the spot capturing the image to tell you the story.
Which I loved, by the way. Did you invent, Dominic, true or false, did you invent the shooting yourself in the reflection of the car window?
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of invented that. And remember, I was working with Moses at the time through memos, like paper and pen. And he would send me notes throughout the day as to how to best execute this new form of gathering news. And yeah, one thing led to the next. And believe it or not, that's one thing that stands out in most people's minds is my reflection in the car or at the mall or, you know, some mirror that I'm passing by. And nowadays, you know, people and with a camera is a given. But back then, it really stood out to the point where other networks, and I won't mention any names, but reporters would come up to me and say, "Can you teach me this style?"
We've already mentioned Sifto, so it's okay.
Yeah, and it was some Sifto people.
I'm sure Austin Delaney learned everything from you guys at Citytv. He might have told me as much when he was here a couple of months ago.
Look, we were like the little brother with these other networks, but we were the fun little brother. And everybody wanted to be a part of Citytv, but it didn't garner the respect I think it deserved. And we always had to kind of fight for our right to party, if I can say it that way. And we did introduce a lot of concepts from, you know, street front videography, interactive, you know, studioless shooting environments. So we did do a lot, I think, Moses leading the way, that really, you know, to this day is accepted as normal.
And what's your relationship like today with Moses?
Oh, it's great. Moses was just at my exhibit a few weeks ago.
Which exhibit is this?
I have
Is this a Fellini?
This is Fellini.
I know. I was doing some looking into what's Dominic up to these days. Tell me about the Fellini. We'll come back to City because I have some clips and stuff. But.
Well, Fellini was sort of a interesting part of my life that sort of happened. I tell everybody I didn't go looking for Fellini. Fellini's legacy somehow found me when I was in Rome. And I have been able to acquire the largest private collection of Fellini artifacts in the world.
Really?
That are now here in Toronto. And we just finished a wonderful 25-day exhibit at the Italian Contemporary Film Festival that brought in the likes of Adam Egoyan and major producers, directors from Italy, that brought in the University of Toronto, who's helping us digitize 250 film reels that we own of Fellini's.
Dominic, this is
drawings.
big. This is massive.
It's bigger than I ever thought it was, and little did I ever think that this was where my career was headed.
Okay, I feel like this is like a Tarantino movie. So we're in the beginning. You know, I got a lot of Citytv questions. Now we find out what you're doing now with Fellini. So you just came back from Italy.
I had visited Italy with my two daughters to take a break from the industry.
Oh, because this film festival was here then.
The film festival is here in Toronto.
It's the Italian Film Festival in Toronto.
Yes.
I'm with you now. See, I'm not as quick as you guys. Okay, but you were for personal, pleasure?
We acquired the collection in 2019 out of Rome, Italy. The collection had never left Fellini's office since his passing in 93.
Wow.
So we have everything. Costumes from La Dolce Vita.
Would you buy it on like a Facebook marketplace?
Well, I wish it was that easy. But it was quite an undertaking working with the Italians and getting the collection here to Toronto. And the intention is to, you know, travel it all over the world, film exhibits all over the world, New York, LA, Montreal, Berlin, Venice, Rome.
Okay, all the hot spots. Listen, so the name Sciullo, that's of Italian descent?
It is.
For a moment, I thought it might be Irish, so it's not. Okay, gotcha. Okay, so you know your Italian food. You're in Italy all the time. It sounds like you're in Italy. You're acquiring Fellini. You just went there with your kids or whatnot. Okay, you know a good lasagna when you have one, right?
I think so.
So can I send you home with a large lasagna. It's frozen in my freezer right now from Palma Pasta. The Paciucci family owns Palma Pasta. This is independently owned. It is the Paciucci family emigrated from Italy, and this is authentic Italian food that I believe you will love this food, and there's only one way to find out. I need to send you home with a lasagna, and you need to tell me what you think of the lasagna. Can we do that?
You want a lasagna report?
I want you to get your big camera, not these new modern light cameras, and I want you to go into the window of a car, and in the reflection, I want Dominic Sciullo to
sample the
report
lasagna.
How does the Palma Pasta lasagna taste? Would you do that for me?
I think I can do that. I don't know if I can find a beta cam, but I think I can shoot it.
You know who's got one? I think Ed Conroy has one.
I'm sure Ed has a beta cam and a playback machine. And
all right, well, Joel Goldberg, Jay Gold, as I like to call him, who I was just chatting with, and I was asking him about Moses' involvement today, because he's still working at the Zoomerplex there, and he says Moses is still hands-on. Like, yes. Moses has got to be he's definitely in his 80s, but he's got to be like 80, I don't know, around 82, 83 years old. I don't know. Okay, so more on Moses in a moment, but since you're bringing home a delicious lasagna from Palma Pasta, great partners of this program, I'm sending you home a fresh craft beer from Great Lakes Brewery.
Wow.
I want a full report, Dominic.
This is a complete meal deal. Is there a drive-through?
I'm opening a drive-through in New Toronto here. By the way, question. So you're videographer, Mr. I do it all myself. This is what we know you for. But you got a guy taking video of you right now. Like, that sounds like bullshit.
Yeah.
Why do you have this young man who's also, why do you make him dress up? Does he want to dress up, or do you tell him there's a dress code in this
I just think he looks really good.
Do you dress him? Daniel, just yes or no. Are you dressed like this because this is how you want to dress, or are you dressed like this because this is how Dominic wants you to dress? Okay, he says, okay, you got it well trained. Okay. All right, so keep taking your video. I think Dominic should be doing the video, doing his own.
Here, well, I can take the camera. I can easily do this. This is a lot easier for me these days.
Well, it's more, I think it's more fun. I'll tell you, so I'm going to get back to that. So do I have, well, I'll give you here. I'll give you a measuring tape, Dominic. This is courtesy of Ridley Funeral Home. Measure what you wish. I don't need to know the details of that one. Keep that report private.
Can I measure the lasagna with that?
Yeah, you can. Let me know. There's a lot of lasagna coming your way. I think you're going to be able to feed Daniel here as well. So you got to thank you, Ridley Funeral Home. They have a great podcast I produce called Life's Undertaking. Brad Jones is the owner. He's the funeral director at Ridley Funeral Home, 14th and Lakeshore. Pay tribute without paying a fortune. RidleyFuneralHome.com. Okay, we'll get to the Maple Leafs later. They got great baseball going on at Christie Pets. But you, Dominic Sciullo, you're the first videographer. Moses' vision, I'm a big fan of it, and I understand that you're going to do all the parts. You're going to be holding the camera. You're going to be the guy talking. You're going to have to do it all, which is what we do today, of course. But back then, this is revolutionary, especially in Canada. But part of the reason all these other places are doing it now is to cut costs. Like, so how much here is necessity being the mother of invention? Because notoriously, because I've talked to so many people who were working with Moses at the Citytv empire there, they talk about there wasn't a lot of money flying around. You had to do things cheaply. You having all those roles is probably because it is much cheaper than having a camera person. You having it's less expensive.
Yes, you nailed it. That's exactly the reason how this sort of evolved. But it became more than just cutting costs. It became a style. And it got to the point where there wasn't just one videographer. There was, videographers within every single show that was produced at Citytv. And not only, were they 1.5 minute segments, but I ended up producing several half-hour, 1 hour specials as a videographer.
Can you list like one or two of your personal favorites of those specials you would produce there? Can you remember any of them, Dominic? Were any of them, memorable?
Well, there was a
No, I'm putting you on the spot.
You're putting me on the spot.
You know what they said about Woodstock, right? Like, if you could remember Woodstock, you weren't there, man.
That's right.
I think it's the same thing about Citytv in the 80s. If you can remember working at Citytv in the 80s, you weren't there.
Yes. There was definitely a half-hour special we did on fashion alongside Fashion Television that was driven by two videographers, I being one of them. And we basically had a half-hour special that aired in prime time that again, I asked Moses if I could create the show, and he allowed me to create it without, giving him a script and an entire breakdown. I would shoot it, and he would review it, and from there he would tweak it, and the next thing you know, it was on the air.
That's amazing. I love it. It's sort of what's going on here, except nobody's tweaking anything around here, which explains the content not being very good. Okay, so Jeannie Becker is involved with fashion television at that time, right?
Oh, yes.
And I'm going to ask you if you had any inkling that maybe this J.D. Roberts guy on Much Music was, well, he obviously was. He became a news person in Canada first, but did you see the future of J.D. Roberts' career?
I couldn't predict the future of J.D. Roberts' career, but I couldn't predict the future of a lot of these talented individuals. And so many of them, went on to other networks in the United States. And
like Mary Garofalo?
Mary Garofalo.
So I'm pronouncing that wrong all these years.
Yeah.
Add it to the list.
Mary went off to New York City, and she had some, big shows at the time. Yeah. J.D. was with a variety of different networks from Fox to... And
who's Russ Salzberg?
Russ, yeah, sports.
He went on to be in New York. He's probably still doing something there.
Yeah, Thalia Shuras.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, there's quite a few. Now, is that better?
Did you ever consider it?
I considered it. I certainly considered a move to New York City. I just didn't have the right opportunity. I had responsibilities in Toronto that I just couldn't abandon. But definitely, there was definitely the thought of at least getting to New York City. If I couldn't get to Wall Street, I could get there in another fashion.
Well, let me play a little clip. Just to jog the memory here, but let's hear this.
February 3rd, 1989. This is Toronto. Shooting spree. Battling the blaze. And Toronto NFL bid. City Bowl with Gord Martineau and Muskowski. And the City Bowl News team brings you to Toronto's News.
Good evening. A province-wide alert tonight for two men wanted in connection with last night's random
There you go. If you want to hear a small world story, so I spent Friday night at the CNE Band Shell to watch Cypress Hill. It's the Toronto Festival of Beer. They go 3 nights. One night's like the hip-hop night, then they have the country night, and then they have like an emo night or whatever. I'm there for the hip-hop night. The guy who owns the Toronto Festival of Beer is Anne Muskowski's partner. Isn't that a small world story?
Yeah, but I was just thinking back on Glenn Cole there.
Talk to me.
I haven't heard his voice.
You didn't like my small world story. You're poo-pooing it Jane Siberry style. You're like, that's not that interesting.
See, Anne Muskowski, I didn't know all that well. I was very close with Gord. I still am close with Gord. And we actually ran a podcast, believe it or not, during COVID.
You and Gord?
Gord and I, yeah. Called Aging Better.
Okay, I Gord, by the way, appears in my buddy's films all the time. My buddy Stu Stone, who I met at the Toronto Festival of Beer, by the way. More on that later in the week. But I see him pop up in cameos in these movies that Stu Stone and his brother-in-law Adam Rodness are making. Fun fact there. But tell me more about so you and Gord Martineau remain close. You needed a podcast.
Yeah, we just created a podcast that actually worked quite well during COVID. We had to keep ourselves busy somehow. And we did about 40 episodes on aging. And we brought in all sorts of aging specialists, doctors, and scientists, and educators from around the world. And we created a nice little storyline about aging.
You know, part of the secret to aging well is to have those beautiful blue eyes that Gord Martineau has. Yeah,
he doesn't age. So that's why he hosted the show.
Yeah, but how's aging going for you? I mean, you look like you're well maintained. Like you look young to me.
It's what's inside that counts.
What's inside? And show me what's inside there, Dominic. Okay.
It's been a journey. I was working alongside Moses up until about 5 years ago.
At the Zoomerplex.
At the Zoomerplex with Joel Goldberg.
Okay, so here let's advance. I know we should get you out of Citytv, I suppose. Obviously, I could spend 90 minutes there. So I'll play one clip of you on cable. I almost called it CP24, but it was called Cable Pulse 24.
Originally.
Right, of course. So let's play this clip of you.
Cable Pulse 24 weather, brought to you by 680 News.
The horror of the Tabor, Alberta shooting and last week's massacre in Colorado is reverberating through one Mississauga high school. Videographer Dominic Sciullo rather finds that malicious threats of students, staff, and parents on edge.
We were just thinking, yeah, this is John Fraser. It's not supposed to happen here. And, like, people are saying that there's, like, a death list or hit list. And they're going to, like, they already have 2 people on the hit list that they want to catch first.
Yeah.
So
At this school?
Yeah, at this school. So we're all worried.
A recent incident of vandalism that made reference to the tragedy in Colorado has both parents and students here at John Fraser Secondary very concerned about their safety.
There was a graffiti in the boys' washroom. It said, if you thought Colorado was bad, wait till you see me. And so they just locked all the boys' bathrooms, and they locked all the doors that, like, aside from the front doors from the outside.
So these are locked now?
Yes.
They've been kept locked?
The one that had the vandalism was kept locked immediately.
Is there a sense of overreaction to any kind of incident lately?
I think there's a really everybody's highly sensitized to any incidents that refers to violence, and especially in schools. And the kids, as all of the parents in the community, were nervous that these types of things that can happen.
You have to be concerned that if there is an allegation or a threat, that it has to be investigated properly.
Peel Regional Police and John Fraser Secondary School tell me that they're going to be looking for this suspect who's responsible for the graffiti. And they say that the teachers will be talking about this incident next week in class with their students and encouraging them to report any acts of vandalism. Dominic Sciullo, Peel Regional Headquarters, Cable Pulse 24.
Okay, Cable Pulse 24. So obviously, you did a lot of things working at Chum City there.
Yeah, I don't even remember that story, but, you know, I was filing 5 to 10 stories a week, so it's hard for me to remember everything. But
thank you to Ed Conroy, by the way, who actually archived that clip so goofs like me could play it for you on podcast.
But I noticed it was Marissa, I think, hosting, and she almost mentioned Dwight Drummond as the videographer, who I was, you know, privileged to train Dwight Drummond. And I ran into Dwight just on Friday night.
Small world. And
we caught up at the closing gala for the Italian Contemporary Film Festival, which he attended. And it was like it was yesterday. Great to see people from City. It really is. It was just such a special time in my life. You know, Joel and I had a drink together a couple weeks ago at the Fellini collection and reminiscing about our time on the road. It was special. Everybody had a very close relationship. We were all friends. We all hung out together, and we did a little bit of work, which ended up being, you know, some cool shit.
Well, I love how it all connects, right? So Joel Goldberg working on Electric Circus, and there's a guy there. I don't know if he's working security or whatever, a young guy named Dwight Drummond. And then, of course, the famous, anyone listening to Toronto Mike has heard the Maestro Fresh West origin story and how that ties to Electric Circus. And Joel Goldberg is directing the early Maestro Fresh West videos, including Let Your Backbone Slide. And if you watch that video and Drop the Needle in these big early videos, you'll see cameo appearances by Dwight Drummond, because Dwight Drummond became friendly with Joel Goldberg from this period. It's just kind of fascinating to think now, if you watch local news on CBC, it's going to probably be anchored by Dwight Drummond. Yeah. It's wild what came out of that environment.
And the great thing is, you know, these people, they haven't changed at all. They're the same people they were, you know, back in the 80s and early 90s. So we knew we had a special time. We knew it wasn't going to last forever. And it was pretty devastating to us when, you know, news broke that Citytv was going to be dismantled, or Chum.
Now, that dismantling was by Rogers, right?
There was a combination of Rogers and Bell, because we had so many properties that one could not take them all on, so they had to be divested to the other. So Rogers ended up selling CP24 to Bell.
Bell, of course. Enter Steve Anthony from Stage Right with Ann Romer there. Okay, so unfortunate, right? What I monitored on my blog before the podcast was a blog, but I was a big fan of the environment that you worked in, that Moses built, that vision. And then I watched piece by piece all the interesting character parts, all the kind of the the fabric of the city, the stuff that I liked, would be dismantled piece by piece and kind of sanitized and covered in bleach after the acquisition of Citytv by Rogers. You know, what would go away? Speaker's Corner would go away. When Silverman Helps went away. All these things I dug were disappearing piece by piece. It's unfortunate. Now it's sort of like it became like all the other stations.
Well, that's just it. It became purchase programming. We took pride in reflecting on the community, right from the on-air talent that Moses would individually hire himself to reflect on, you know, the Greek community or the Italian community or the French community,
right?
Given it's such a multicultural city. And remember, this goes back to the 80s where you didn't have a lot of multiculturalism, diversity on air. So,
and I feel like if you at Sifto, if Anne Moskowski, who's a beautiful blonde woman with blue eyes, if she got the role, she might become Anne Malone or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So and Moses would want us to emphasize our culture and our names and our hand gestures. He didn't sterilize us. He let us go and be who we are. And you look back and you realize it was quite revolutionary what he did for this industry. He's quite the visionary, and he still is to this day. He still is involved day to day. As he keeps saying, the only way to keep going is to keep going.
Excellent. So why do you end up leaving the Chum Television?
Well, that was probably one of the biggest career decisions I've ever made. And it was because I had the opportunity to acquire this collection, which nobody believed me, including Moses. Because if you think back to the early days of Citytv, Moses is another huge Fellini fan. And if you look at how he built Citytv with these characters, it's very Fellini-esque.
But don't you acquire that in 2019?
I do acquire that in 2019, and I had to resign from Moses. And
I meant, like, when did you leave the city? I know Moses is Zoomer too, but okay, so just not to complicate this. So what? Because there's something between City and Zoomer for you. Because you're at Global.
I was at Global.
Right. So
I got picked up by Global to produce an investigative news show called 16 by 9, The Bigger Picture.
So do they recruit you? Like they tap you on the shoulder and make you an offer you couldn't refuse?
That yes, it was with Mary Garfello, who was our lead investigative reporter. So I spent 2 years there developing this new concept at Global, and we did quite well with this new investigative show.
Well, let me pat you on the back for a minute. I feel like you need a little ego boost here. I can tell you, okay, so you were executive producer for Global Television, 16 by 9, The Bigger Picture, and in those 2 years, you earned 4 Gemini nominations and an Edward R Murrow Award.
Yeah. No, we had a great team, and we were competing with Dateline and out of the U.S., and we were actually beating them out on the West Coast. Global has an incredible team of reporters coast to coast, and I was able to rely on each and every one of those. One of the stories I remember specifically was the passing of Michael Jackson and assigning a team in L.A. to cover that. So I found that job, quite thrilling, investigating these stories on a day-to-day basis. But then Moses called me, and his words were, "Are you done?" And I said, "I think I understand what you're saying." So I would say yes. And he goes, "Can you meet for lunch?" And I said, "Sure." And he says, "Well, come on over to my place." And I said, "Okay." And I showed up at his place. And speaking of being dressed, maybe this is where the PTSD comes in. I was there in a suit because I had just left Global to meet him for lunch.
Okay.
And he looked at me and he said, "Why are you dressed like that?"
That's what I said to you at the door. Why are you dressed like that?
So I said, "Well, Moses, remember I'm working at Global these days." He goes, "Okay, whatever." And he goes, "Are you ready to come back to Zoomer?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I am ready." So that led to another 10 years with Moses and, working alongside Joel Goldberg.
In Liberty Village.
And it was great to see Moses reinvent this new culture of catering to the baby boomers. And it's funny because I spent a lot of time on the road with Moses, and everywhere we'd go, people would say to Moses, well, but Moses, you know, you're all about much music and this young generation. We want to hear about Citytv. And of course, you know, he's leading ZoomerMedia at this point in time. And he says, but these are the same people. These are the same people that grew up with much music. They're just a little bit older now. So he just continued catering to that generation of baby boomers and again, reinvented the broadcast wheel with ZoomerMedia and all the properties there. And it was great. It's great to learn from someone of that caliber. And I've had the privilege of being by his side really for almost 4 decades and learning his vision. And I think it's allowed me to continue, you know, 4 decades in this industry, which, as you know, is not an easy task, especially these days of surviving.
Moses, he knows who he likes and he wants to keep them around. So you and Joe Goldberg would be a couple of guys. Who else at Zoomer is from the Citytv days? Anyone else? I know
John Thornton.
Libby's there.
Libby Znaimer, his sister.
Right.
There have been Gallagher was there for a small stint.
He talked about that. He was on the morning show, and it ended too early for him. But how about Ziggy Lawrence? She was there for quite a long. She moved out of the city, so I'm not sure she's there anymore.
I think she's still there,
working remotely.
But she has moved out of the city. But another, you know, wonderful woman, so talented and humble. And my first few years, her and I shared an office at Zoomer.
Lucky guy.
So, you know, I've been privileged. I really have, just having these people around me my entire career. And it's not until I sit down in front of someone like you that I can reminisce and go back and remember all these stories, because there's a lot of stories to remember.
Well, there's a guy, we kind of took you out of city, and there's a gentleman who sadly passed away far too young, who I would love to find out your relationship with him. Let me play a little clip of him.
The following program contains adult themes, nudity, and coarse language. Viewer and parental discretion is advised.
Were you friends with Mark Daly?
Yeah, we were all friends with Mark Daly. Very sad story. You know, Mark was just such a character, the voice, as he was known. And he was like the local cop in the City Pulse newsroom. He just had a great connection with our police forces and our emergency services. And you just always wanted Mark to do your voiceover. No matter what show you were doing, you wanted Mark to be part of it. Another, you know, very humble guy. From what I remember, he used to be a truck driver in the U.S. He's an American. Yeah. And again, the stories that we would hear from these individuals and the personalities, they just varied so much. But everybody was, you know, fascinating and interesting, and that's what came across on camera. And I think that's how we connected with Toronto, just through the personalities, which you don't see that much of anymore. You don't see personality, you just see a reporter.
There's a young filmmaker named Sean Menard who made a documentary entitled 299 Queen Street West. Were you able to see that at Roy Thompson Hall or during one of the other, preview events that he had?
I wasn't, and I can't remember. I was supposed to go with Joel, and I didn't make it. But I was with Monica Diol 2 days ago.
Is she in town?
She was.
She's gone.
I don't know.
She did pledge to me that we would find time. No, I'm not joking now. Listen. And when that same
Forgive
event
me,
we
Monica.
met, that 30th anniversary of Electric Circus, we had some FaceTime there because it was the same week as a Massey Hall Rock of Fame induction that I was chatting her up at as well, because this is all around this 299 Queen Street West documentary. But Monica did pledge to me that she would carve out, 60 to 90 minutes when she was in town to be on this very program. I have so many questions for Monica Diol, and you're telling me she was just in town.
She was in town at a Mott 32 restaurant opening on University Avenue. I believe it was Thursday night, and it was so nice to see her. I think we were grabbing some barbecue duck together.
Okay, that doesn't make me feel any better, Dominic. So I'm glad you got some time with Monica, but I want some time with Monica Diol, okay?
Well, if she's listening.
If she's listening, Monica, it's time. Next time you're in Toronto, I'll even bring my studio closer to wherever the heck you are. Like, I wouldn't do that for Dominic, but I'll do it for you, okay? Okay, so back to the documentary, which Monica's in it, and I mean, No,
She said she was working on it, so I'm not sure. We didn't have a lot of time to talk. It was a busy place.
But that's a different like wait, so the 299 Queen Street West documentary, which you were invited, I guess you couldn't make it, but Joel Goldberg, I did see him at the Roy Thompson Hall premiere. I've seen it, and it was scheduled and promoted to make an appearance on Crave, where you could watch it on demand. Never happened, so it never did stream. And I was just curious if you had even seen it, but it sounds like you missed it.
I missed it, but I will definitely be seeing it.
How are you seeing it? Is this thing being re-edited to be streamed eventually on Crave?
Well, I would.
What do you know, Dominic?
I don't know.
Because you know that was a while ago now that this thing was scheduled. We're talking.
But
now.
there's always a way you can access this content digitally.
You've got friends in high places.
I think I'll speak to Moses.
He's got a secret link.
He does.
Okay.
But it reminds me of another story about all this old footage.
Let's
I
hear
think Mr. Conroy was part of when we were out of 299 Queen. And we got a call that there was a bunch of tapes in a canister, beta tapes, behind a building at Broadview and DVP.
Okay. I'm excited about this story, Dominic.
And Moses says to me, can you find out what's going on with all these tapes that used to be in our library?
Oh.
And I think I spoke to Ed, who we didn't have much of a relationship at that time. And I think this is how Ed came to be part of the family at Zoomer. And Ed said, well, I've just come across dozens of Much Music and the original tapes that are now in a garbage canister behind a production house on Queen Street. And Moses assigned me to go get the tapes.
Whoa.
So we ended up gathering all these tapes, and of course they had some great content on them. You remember the show The Originals with Moses?
Absolutely, yeah.
So from that, we wanted to recreate Originals 2.0. So we would have looked at the characters from back then in the 70s and 80s and reintroduced them, in the 2000s to see just where they are these days.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, after acquiring all these tapes, we were not able to acquire the rights to content that we had ourselves produced.
So that's because they're owned by either Bell or Rogers, depending what they, and this is all coming back to a documentary that I understand is in production regarding Electric Circus, because hold on to that for a second. But these tapes, how were they in this? What happened? How did the tapes get out of there? Was no library at 299 Queen?
Well, we had an extensive library, but if you know these tapes, the beta tapes, they're not, little. They take up a lot of space, so I assume they were clearing out space.
But who are they? Is this Bell?
I can't say
is Bell
specifically.
Media throwing out these
I
tapes?
can't say who was throwing them out. I don't know.
You don't know.
I just know that they were in a garbage bin behind a production house, which I don't recall the name of.
Wow.
So we had the tapes, but we didn't have the rights to them, and unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to recreate that show with Moses back when I was at Zoomer. So that's one of the
Dominic,
things.
Fascinating. Now, I bet you those tapes are in, because speaking of moving out of the city, like Ziggy did, Ed did the same thing. Like he up and said, I'm leaving Scarborough, I'm going, wherever, to find Wheels' dad in Port Hope or something like that. He's got to have, I think, I was once invited there, but he didn't follow through with the specifics, so I never got to Ed. I wanted to see. I assume he's got this giant barn full of beta tapes. Like, I hope they're being safely preserved in Conroy's
Well, it's
farm.
a process, isn't it? It's a process digitizing these tapes, and I'm going through it again. It's funny because I looked after Moses' legacy. I really did. I had all his tapes in my possession from his CBC days in my office. That was one of my jobs, is to look after his legacy.
Know that. So you're bearing the lead, man. Okay.
Right down to actually looking at funeral plots with him.
At Ridley Funeral Home.
At Ridley Funeral Home. And I had all these tapes in my office, and never mind what we had at 299 Queen. We had like thousands of square feet of library with these tapes housed. And to digitize all that is not only time consuming, it's very expensive. So I'm doing that now, literally, with Fellini's legacy.
Right.
Which seems to have gone full circle. It's very strange. It's very Fellini-esque, my life in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
But now I'm looking after Fellini's legacy, which is consists of the same tapes and written materials and props and costumes. And I don't know how I got myself here, but I do know it's very expensive because the University of Toronto quoted us on how much it's going to cost to digitize these tapes over 2 years.
Are you going to give me the number, or do you want me to guess?
Well,
I have no frame of reference.
I don't have a library, but I have 250 reels.
Okay, 250 reels
of 35 millimeter tape, which isn't beta tape; it's just 35 mil.
But does I need to? Like, I'm trying to understand, because when the Tragically Hip put out their album in 8, it had to be baked. Does this stuff have to be baked, or no? We're talking about a different technology.
I think it's a different technology.
Different technology. Okay, so it's literally it's got to be like in real time. I think
Correct.
Real pun intended.
Pun intended.
You can use that if you want.
I totally got it.
Daniel, did you get that on tape? Okay, Dominic can use that, but he's got to say props to Toronto Mike for that one. Okay, now I'm gonna guess this is a large number because you're setting up the story. This could be a big number. I don't have a frame of reference, so my guess will be useless, except I'm going to guess a very high number. I'm going to guess they want $80,000 to do that. That's a ridiculous
That would
guess.
be cheap.
Okay.
That would be very cost effective. It's 250 35 millimeter reels would come in at around $400,000 in 2 years of work with two people at the University of Toronto with the equipment.
Wow.
So it's not cheap to keep this material,
I'll do it for
restore it and preserve
I'll do it for $300,000. Ed and I
don't know if the basement has enough storage here to be, and it's got to be a little bit colder. To be
also,
honest.
it floods. Not this basement, actually. You're in a dry basement, but this neighborhood got flooded just a couple of weeks ago, and it's not worth the risk. I can't afford the insurance policy on that one.
Yeah, a lot of places.
So, okay, now I got to tie up some loose ends here. Okay, so of course, you being responsible for the Moses legacy is the perfect training to be responsible now for the Fellini legacy. I think that's you're the ideal guy considering that training. But back to the quickly. So 299 Queen Street West, when I saw it, they had this footage, much music footage from the early days, the early years, you know. Shout out to Catherine McClenahan, for example. Like, we had footage of her, which is really hard to find. There was a lot of press where Sean was like sitting in the Bell Media libraries, like, I have access to the archives. But this early footage, Keen Eye Mike here is maybe the only one who gives a shit, actually, is noticing that, oh, this early footage that we're seeing here is actually from the personal collection of FOTM Hall of Famer Ed Conroy. This is my observation. Oh, this isn't from the Bell Media library. I believe, and I think Joel's confirmed this, he was on at Christy Pitts, back to that in a minute. I talked to him just a couple of Sundays ago at Christy Pitts. I believe that the old tapes are gone from the Bell Media library. And if it wasn't for a guy with a passion named Ed Conroy, they would have been lost to history forever.
Yes, yeah.
Think about that for a minute.
Ed saved the legacy, and in so many ways. And that's how, you know, we came to be. And I think it might have stemmed from that garbage canister.
That's the Conroy origin story. Okay, and now back to Electric Circus. But you personally didn't have a professional role with Electric Circus. You were just working in the building.
I would make my way through the Electric Circus dance floor at 7 p.m. Friday evenings after a long day on the news beat, and see all the dancers warming up in costume.
Did you see the cowboy dancer?
I saw the cowboy dancer. I saw just about every costume you can imagine at 7 p.m. on a Friday late afternoon.
Do you remember the moment? Because I would tune in, and I saw I knew people in high school who would dance there. Shout out to the late, great Warren Peace. And I would see this. That was Warren Blackwood, by the way, for those following me at home. But I did notice a moment where they went from the regular dancer people to like supermodels. Do you remember this moment?
Well, you'd have to ask George, like a Janice,
I thought you were going to tell me
or Monica.
Okay, George has already politely turned me down after he stepped away from CP24. And I was in an elevator with him at that very same event I met you, and I was talking to him.
George and I actually started together at Citytv. We were very young. We were early 20s, if not 20. And him and I grew up together, and we've had many stories.
Well, you know what you're going to do for me now is you're going to say, hey, George.
George and Monica. Well, we could just recreate Electric Circus here in the basement.
That's what I'm looking for. Can we get Michael Williams in on this action, or
We
is
need
he
a
still
disco
upset
ball
at
first.
Monica? Okay.
Michael Williams, yeah, he's another one who actually reached out because supposedly he studied Fellini, is another big Fellini fan. So it's great. That's one thing that I've noticed with this collection. It's brought me back to a lot of people that I grew up with in the industry.
Okay, well,
No Cleveland, no Bowie.
So no, what city do we attribute Fellini to here? No Rome, no Fellini?
No Rome, no Fellini.
Okay, you can use that one too here. All right, so Electric Circus, Joel Goldberg tells me on this program, so I'm not speaking out of school, that he is working on a Electric Circus documentary with the guy who did the Drop the Needle documentary. You know his name? It'll come to me in a minute. I can't remember it right now, but I'm going to Google it. I met him at that same freaking event, actually. But the guy who did the Drop the Needle,
I know who you're talking about. But Joel was much the music guy, and I was more the news serious guy.
Sure, but I was thinking with the Electric Circus doc, one of the problems is if you want to do it with you got to deal with Rogers and Bell on that one. Like this is one where they both have some stake there, I would think.
Yeah, he's going to probably have to deal with all that, and that's going to take up a lot of his time.
Wow. How many artifacts you got in your exhibit? What is the full name? What is the proper name of the Federico Fellini exhibit?
We call it Fellini Forever, and we've acquired 1,500 artifacts and 250 film reels, mostly 35 millimeter, that sat dormant in Fellini's office after his passing in 1993 and have never seen the light of day. So they've just been revealed for the first time ever here in Toronto. Everything from his costumes, his props. We've got his glasses, his hat, his scarf. We've got his entire desk. We've got pencils that he would sketch out his
with his
scenes.
teeth marks in it, like John Voight.
Pretty much. Pretty much. There's not much we don't have. We've got clapper boards. We've got megaphones. We've got directors' chairs. We've got signed posters. The film La Dolce Vita?
Yeah.
Well, that's probably one of the most famous films that came out of Italy. And we have a costume from La Dolce Vita. So we were very lucky to have acquired this collection and reintroduce it to the next generation, which another thing I learned with this exhibit, how many young people have a fascination with Fellini. And it's something that came as a big surprise to me because I knew, the 50, 60, 70-year-olds know the name and do remember his films. But when the 20-year-olds come in and say they've studied him and are fascinated with his producing and directing, it just proved to me that I'm on the right track here.
I think you are, and I think the world is ready for like a Fellini revival. Like I think a lot of people will become aware of Fellini through this work, and we talked about the 299 Queen Street West doc. We're not sure what the status of that is. We talked about the Electric Circus doc, which is early production, I guess, but we know some good people are involved with that. There must be a documentary in production on Fellini.
There certainly is.
Okay, Dominic, let me hear these details.
Well,
where are we at? Who's involved? What's going on?
I would be in trouble by Moses if I did not document the entire process from the minute we walked into Fellini's office to the time that the collection left Italy, to the time it arrived in Toronto, and it went on display at the exhibit. So, yes, it's been documented. Yes, we've had a few interesting calls out of Los Angeles and Beverly Hills interested in the film on Fellini, given the 250 never-before-seen film reels that would help tell the story beautifully. So that is definitely one of the projects that we have lined up with this. As a matter of fact, I have a call with them tomorrow.
Oh, would you do that
but
call
that's where Dan
here,
comes in and reminds me what time that call is, because he's a lot younger.
Would you have the call on Toronto Mike? Okay, we can do it
live
through the board, and I can record it, and this can be I can document the documenting of the Fellini forever.
But there's something as exciting that's happening really soon too. We're going to be having some exquisite Fellini dinner nights through Charlie's Burgers. Have you ever heard of Charlie's Burgers?
Where's Charlie's Burgers?
Charlie's Burgers is an underground dinner event, and they have them all over the world. They fly in Michelin star chefs.
Right.
So we plan on bringing one in from either New York or Rome and doing a 60-person dinner event at the collection in our warehouse in an undisclosed area for 60 people with our own Fellini Forever private wine label.
So this is an event for 60 rich people. Because that's going to cost a pretty penny. You're to fly in a Michelin star chef from Rome for this Fellini event. I'm not getting out of that for $100.
Maybe 200.
200,000.
Well, that's a little much.
So so I have wealthy listeners. Like if somebody is intrigued here, like do you have a website or do you have?
We do. We have Fellini-forever.com where we keep everything updated. And we will certainly be introducing all of this in the very near future. We're talking to the AGO. We're talking to TIFF. We're talking to, like I said, some producers out of LA.
This is in production right now, this documentary.
This is in production. It is in production. We are securing the studio at this point in time. I've shot most of it at this point in time.
I'm fascinated. Okay, you have some footage, but we're talking TIFF 2025.
We are.
Is the target.
But we'd like to work with TIFF this year with an exhibit of our collection, a small exhibit that we'd put on display.
Well, I know people there. I know people at the AGO. You let me know, man. Shout out to Bob Willett. His wife is one of the big people there. Jim Shedden is there. He's a great FOTM. Have you talked to Jim Shedden? We got to get a Fellini.
I believe Jim was the one who came by, and he came by twice, Jim, and he's coming back.
You let me know if you need any help with Jim fucking Shedden, okay? Because I lent him a board for his podcast. He was doing it with Alan Zweig. These are all
Jim,
people
you listening?
in the orbit.
You listening here, Jim?
Of course, Jim's listening. Jim's a great FOTM, but yeah, he's invited me to a few great events.
So Jim's been great. He's visited the collection twice. He's in awe, and I think he really wants to do something with us. And look, it'd be an honor to work with the AGO and put this out there and travel it around the world with the AGO.
Okay, so there's a lot going on in your universe here. So here I am thinking it's Citytv everywhere, and then we're finding all this Fellini stuff out. So you're a fascinating guy here. Now, that event you've got where, Federico, what is it? Fellini-forever.com is where you can go to learn more about this stuff, if I remember that correctly. But you've got this great event with the food and everything. I just want to let you know that's for the people who've got some cash to flash and want to live life and enjoy life. But if you don't have the cash to flash, but you still want to live life and enjoy life, I'm telling you, the best bang for your buck in the city to be entertained on a Sunday afternoon is Toronto Maple Leafs baseball. Okay, listen, ask me what the ticket costs to see the Maple Leafs play baseball at Christie Pitts this coming Sunday. Semi-pro ball, the best baseball in the city outside the Dome. Ask me, Dominic, what does a ticket cost?
It's a donation.
It's nothing. It's there's not even a hat being passed around anymore. The new owners don't even do that. So basically, come on out. Fill the hill, watch great baseball. Hopefully Mother Nature cooperates. Grab a hot dog, I don't know, an ice cream cone or whatever. Get yourself a beer. They got a Maple Leafs lager there. It's delicious. And come say hi to me. I'm recording live from just beyond the left field fence. Joel, you can drop by again. He doesn't live too far. He dropped by last time I recorded live. Come on by again. We'll do a review of the Dominic Sciullo Toronto Mike debut. I need to talk to you about it, Joel. So everybody's welcome. Come on by, say hi. Again, I've been told by Toronto Maple Leafs, I'm throwing out the first pitch. Dominic, you should be throwing out the first pitch.
Have you practiced?
No, not even. I haven't even touched a hard ball in many, many years, actually. I think it'd be fun to do no practice. Give me the ball. Let's see what I got. Like I used to play wall ball, but it wasn't a hard ball. We'll see what I got.
Just don't hit anybody.
Are you a baseball fan, Dominic?
Well, look.
You're a hockey guy.
I'm more of a hockey guy. Right. But, if...
When
the
in
Jays
Rome.
were winning.
When in Rome?
When in Rome, of course. I'll jump on the wagon. I've used that a few times.
And shout out to all the people I'm hearing cry. When in Rome was a band, and they had a big song called The Promise. And I know Perry Lefko, for example, and I know Curtis Joseph, former goaltender of the Toronto Maple Leafs. These are people who hear The Promise by When in Rome and openly weep. I challenge you to go listen to the When in Rome.
Do I have to cry?
You let me know. I want to report. And I want, again, reflection in a car window here. But I do have a book for you here. The History of Toronto Maple Leafs Baseball. Dominic, you can enjoy that.
I can read while
You
I'm
can-
eating lasagna and drinking beer.
You got a good life. And don't forget to be measuring something
And I'm
with
going
a
to
measuring
measure
tape.
the tape.
And one piece of advice here before we wrap up is that if you have old devices, I don't know, those old beta cams or whatever, they're in a garage or a shed or something, don't throw that in the garbage, Dominic, because those chemicals end up in our landfill. That's bad news, buddy. We need to go to recyclemyelectronics.ca, put in your postal code, and you'll find out where you can drop that off near you, and it will be properly recycled so the chemicals don't end up in our landfill. Got it, Dominic?
I heard you.
Okay, so here, so it sounds like we got a good Fellini update. I got some city
History.
Can we shout out Lauren Honickman?
Oh, Lauren.
See, I wanted more. I want more. A few more names. Like I wasn't there. You never saw me in the hallways.
Lauren went off to become a lawyer.
Oh yeah, he's
So-
my lawyer.
There you go.
Because he's a libel guy, and I need a libel guy. He's my lawyer, Lauren Honickman. Love that guy.
Yeah, well, again, another name from the past, and he covered the crime beat. I was just a rookie back when Lauren was reporting, and smart guy. I always
Nice guy, right?
saw
Big
him
Dylan fan.
moving off to yeah, and I think a Rolling Stones fan too.
Oh, possibly. That's his era, but definitely a huge Dylan's head. We did a special episode when Bob Dylan turned 80, and you can hear that in the Toronto Mike feed, where Lauren Honickman and I just talked Bob Dylan for 90 minutes. Here's a name, a guy who I actually dug him up. I didn't literally dig him up. Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home. But I found him, put him on Toronto Mike. It's the first interview of his life about his career. Harold Hossein.
Oh, Harold, our weatherman.
Hurricane Harold. You know, he's a
There's
calypso
a
singer.
personality. Oh, yeah. Harold knew how to predict that weather.
Nobody predicted it. Like, bring an umbrella. Are you allowed? Here's a question, too. It's a Trini, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Am I a white guy allowed to imitate Harold Hossein's accent?
I would say yes, as long as you do it respectfully.
Well, of course, I'm not making fun of him. I love it. But I can't say umbrella without using his accent. So, I just want to make sure that's still okay.
Again, it just shows you the characters we had on that screen.
Right. Peter Silverman's no longer with us.
Oh, Peter. Now, he was a good friend of mine.
Okay. Tell me, because I did have a chat with some people, Christina Tenaglia and some other people, Peter Gross and some people. I put together a special episode on Peter Silverman.
Watch it, buddy.
Watch it, buddy. One of the great iconic moments that I recall. Watch it, buddy. Peter, good guy. He was like a tough fucker, right?
He was a soldier.
Yeah.
Oh, I had some of the best times. I went to France with Peter to cover the 50th anniversary of D-Day.
Wow.
And he was probably in his 60s then, and I was in my 30s. One of the missions was to recreate a jump from a plane. And I said to Peter, I'm not jumping, so I'm not sure how we're going to do this unless you want to carry the camera on the way down. And he says, Wapo, which is how he referred to me back then.
Okay.
You're going to jump with me. And I said, Peter, I'm not jumping with you. So if you want to strap yourself with that guy and jump out of a plane in the middle of France, that's up to you. But I am not jumping out of a plane because I just don't do that kind of stuff. They don't pay me enough to do that kind of stuff.
Right.
So here he is, no problem, getting tied up and being thrown out of a plane to recreate a scene for a news series we did on the 50th anniversary of D-Day.
Wow.
And so this would have been 1994. And he was like a hero to me. The guy was just fearless, and he went after the story at all costs, and he let you know that he was coming.
Watch it, buddy. And that nickname for you, I won't use that name, okay? Just want you to know, Dominic, I will not use that name to address you.
No, but it was all, it was all fun and games back then. There wasn't
in a different era,
It
right?
wasn't a personal thing.
Mhm.
We kind of, poked fun at each other because we liked each other. And we had a really good time. We did. We had a really good time. And Peter was one of those special guys that very memorable. Everybody remembers Peter Silverman.
Okay, last name before we say goodbye. I need to know anything and everything about Ann Romer, okay? Any relationship with Ann Romer?
No, it's one of the people I didn't have much of a relationship with, unfortunately.
Well, you can't be friends with everybody you work with.
There was groups of people that hung out, and I don't think I was part of that
You weren't in
group.
that clique there. All right, then do you have one John Gallagher story you can tell before we say goodbye? We literally collect them on this program. Just one. I think he's owned everything. He had a podcast with Peter Gross called Gallagher and Gross Save the World, and I was lucky enough to produce this thing. And we have about 30 episodes before John sold his home on Avenue Road there, Alpha Avenue Road.
Where is he now?
Halifax.
Oh,
which is where he's from. So he kind of just went home.
He's making noise in Halifax.
Him and his girlfriend there run like a dog hotel spa thing.
Wow.
I know he still does voiceover work.
I've heard him on a couple of spots recently.
But he's doing all right. Like he had a stroke, but
I'm sorry to hear that.
And he suffers from SAD, seasonal affective disorder. So he's always looking for the sun, right? You'll find John.
We got to get him south to Florida.
Well, he spends a lot of time in the sun, but he's doing all right. Like, we keep in touch. He was just on Toronto Mike. I did a phone call with him, like, maybe about 6 weeks ago. But he's told on himself most of the great, he wrote a book even. But is there one John Gallagher story before we play that? I know.
I don't know
you
if
can't
I have
tell
a John
those
Gallagher story.
Nothing that's fit
and
for
anything that I
publication.
might have is not for the mic.
Are you going to get Moses to make his Toronto Mike debut?
I'm going to talk to Moses. I have a meeting coming up with Moses, and I will definitely mention it, and I may even come back and shoot it.
That's Dominic? If you do, I'll put you in the FOTM Hall of Fame if that happens. Okay. I know you're a powerful guy. You're getting lots of shit done. You're going to be the Fellini forever man, and I hope that documentary, I'm invited to the premiere. I can't wait. I hope they serve some Palma pasta at the Fellini forever debut. Let me know if you want me to help connect that. But if you could get Moses on Toronto Mike, honestly, first ballot Hall of Famer, I would just rename the podcast the Dominic Sciullo Toronto Mike podcast.
And that might be the deal.
How was this for you? Did you have a good time?
This was great. You know what? Just
thank you for taking
me back, and I have another meeting to go to after this. Otherwise, I would have worn my Citytv Toronto T-shirt.
Well, that's my job.
Now, if Moses shows up,
this is me dressing up.
If Moses shows up, you have to wear that.
Well, I wore it when I met him. And he said, "Oh my God, it's in such good condition. You've held on to it that long." And I didn't have the heart to tell him it's a replica.
Oh, it's best you don't.
I made him think it was from the 80s there. By the way, if Ziggy, I want to let you know, Ziggy, if you're listening, I will be wearing my Toronto tee by the harbor front later today. And if you spot me, I'll win something. That was the deal. Ziggy would hand them out. That was before your time though.
No, that was around the era 80s.
I love these. Look back. I like this look back at the Citytv era. Dominic, it's a pleasure. This won't be the last time we talk. I'll be seeing you at the Palma Pasta Presents Fellini Forever documentary debut. But thanks for doing this. We'll get a photo by the tree so people can see how I dressed for this event and how you dressed for this event. And I noticed your muscle here. Is he going to beat me up after this?
No, Dan's a pussycat. He's just a smart guy.
Well, he's the pussycat. He's a smart guy. A complete opposite of Dominic Sciullo.
Right. That's why I keep him around.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,527th show.
I love that I made 1,527. Under 1,530.
You're a busy guy. You're in Italy all the time. We tried to get this done, right? I'm going to Italy. You're always globetrotting.
When in Rome.
Promise? The Promise. That's the song you're going to cry to later.
Maybe you connect me in Rome and we have a Rome-Toronto podcast.
Can I expense it? Who can I expense it to Moses?
Fellini.
You can follow me on, I'm all over the place at Toronto Mike, Twitter, Blue Sky, but go to torontomike.com. Again, is it Fellini-forever.com? That's where people should go to learn more about the iconic Federico Fellini.
Yeah, join us and you'll see what we're going to be doing.
I'm into it. 250 film reels, for goodness sakes. And there's a virtual 3D museum.
We've got one online.
You're bearing the lead again. I thought you were in news. What's going on here? Much love to all who made this possible. That's Great Lakes Brewery. Don't forget your beer, Dominic. Palma Pasta. Don't leave without your lasagna. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. The Toronto Maple Leafs baseball team. Everybody, it's Sunday. Come on out. Fill the hill.
I'm going to have Mom and Dad try the Palma.
I want the full report, and I want it in the reflection of a window. And Ridley Funeral Home. See you all. I got to quickly tell people the next episode. Bear with me, Dominic. This is not. Jeff Woods. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. Jeff Woods is going to come on. He wants to talk about being bisexual, and he wants to kick out the bisexual jams. And, you know, that guy's got a great voice, so you can just read the phone book. It'll be interesting. So see you all 10 o'clock tomorrow for Jeff Woods. Peace and love.